the same thing with age. The older generations were the most healthy, which was interesting, especially when we saw the Pygmies in Uganda. We were with a lady who was dancing around who was 105, and she was dancing, like she was jumping around. And then she seemed to be the most sturdy, healthy person. And she had 6 generations under her, not a complete linear line, but her, 6 generations represented. And the youngest people were the least healthy. So these are the people, yeah, just relying on the pots of beans and rice and oil. And so they were the least healthy, but it was pretty obvious that you could see health when they ate their natural diet.
You're still out in California? Where are you at these days?
No, I escaped that whole place. I'm in Austin, Texas, the land of the free.
I see. Okay. Yeah, a lot of people moved to Austin. Yeah, I went to college there. I used to live there for quite a while. Nice place, or at least was when I was there. Anyway, well, Brian, for those that aren't familiar with you, obviously, you and I have known each other for several years now. Remind people a little bit about your background, who you are, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I started as a mechanical engineer, and I kind of, just went about my life. Around age 30, things hit me. My health started to decline. I couldn't eat whatever I wanted anymore. And I actually lost both my parents. So big wake up call, started getting into the diet stuff, got into Mark Sisson, primal, all that, changed my whole life. All my problems kind of seemed to go away. My body composition completely changed just by eating more animal foods. And then 5 years ago, I decided I need to make a film about it. Saw enough bogus vegan films. I had to do something about it. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. I'll remind everyone, you were my first interview. I remember the day because you went on Joe Rogan the day after. It was December 7th, 2018?
So it would have been December 6th, 2017. I went on Rogan December 7th, 2018, because
yes.
it was Pearl Harbor Day is when I went on there. I remember that.
Exactly. And yeah, so it was the day before that, December 6th. And he showed up to my old place in LA, did the first interview. And since then, I've been doing a ton of other interviews. The movie's changed a lot. It's actually turned into a 6-part series. So I think that's better. I know what everyone thinks. Usually people have shorter attention spans these days. We're trying to go mainstream. We're trying to get the most people to watch it and change their mind about bogus mainstream diet stuff. So I think trying to get on Netflix, we have 2 distribution companies kind of going after the film right now to get it on Netflix and worldwide. So that's the real goal. I'm kind of jumping ahead to the film, but I mean, that's kind of who I am these days is just Food Lies. That's my social media. That's my YouTube that I just got a strike on and I can't post for a week. And yeah, that's my thing.
Welcome to the club. I've had 4 strikes on mine in the last few months. So I've been very, I'm sitting on 2 strikes. So one more and my channel's canceled. So I have to be very delicate. So we're kind of focusing more on nutrition related stuff pretty strictly, but yeah. So is the film done then? I mean, it sounds like it may be done. Have you done all the footage and shooting and editing and stuff? You're ready to distribute it, or where you at with that?
No, it's a long story. It's hard to make something super good. We could have the film could have been done. Yes, we could have put it out, last year, maybe, or before COVID. It just wasn't going to be what it could be. And I think like that extra effort takes so much longer. And we've actually gotten a new round of funding as of a month ago. So that's changing things. I was kind of waiting for that. I have a editor director guy that I grew up with, and he's the best person to make it, but he just doesn't have all the time in the world. He has to live. He's not getting paid for this. We don't have a budget enough to pay him. We only have a budget. All the money's gone towards paying the professionals, like the professional composer, the animated graphics guy, that stuff. So yeah, I guess good news and bad news is good news is it's going to be spectacular, like the highest quality thing, we're going big, but then the bad news is it just takes a while. So
Is it the fellow from Hawaii that was a friend of yours? I think I met him, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, you and Mark Bell had lunch with him.
Yeah,
His name
Chris
is
Bell. Yeah,
Jay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
remember him. Yeah, we had lunch. I can't remember where we ate, somewhere, but yeah, okay, I remember talking to him. So, well, tell me. I mean, I know, like, I've been kind of following you a little bit through the social media stuff. I know you kind of had visited Africa. You've been doing a lot of touring around and stuff like that. So, tell us a little bit about some of that stuff. Some of the stuff you've been finding out. Obviously, you like me are both into nutrition, and obviously I'm a big proponent of meat eating, and I think you are too. But what have you sort of, what sort of valuable information have you found throughout going through different places in the world? And I assume part of that's going to make it into the film, if I'm not, correct me if I'm
Oh
wrong.
yeah. Yeah. And it's changed over the years. Yeah. No, I think the film has changed and it's improved over the years because I keep learning more and it keeps getting better. We're getting better quality interviews and I'm learning more. And I think it's all for the good. And so last year, it's almost exactly a year ago, went to Africa and we spent time with the Hadza, the Masaai, and the Pygmies in Uganda. And so that was super valuable, great footage. It's actually the first scene in the film is me running with a bunch of Maasai kids in a field. It's like pretty funny. Uh, it's, yeah, it was a life-changing experience over there. It's exactly what you'd think when you hear the stories of our ancestors and the hunter-gatherers. Just all they care about is meat. All they want to do is eat meat. The Maasai just drinking blood and milk. I mean, it's all there. I want to. I mean, I'll try to jump into some of these details. So people may have heard of Herman Ponzer. I want to tell this little story. Have you heard of Herman Ponzer, the guy
I've heard the
wrote a
name,
book?
but I can't. I've heard the name before, but I can't really remember what he was.
Yeah, he's a Harvard professor, so of course he's into the whole plant-based stuff. He wrote a book called Burn recently, which is about energy expenditure of hunter-gatherers and how it's actually not that different from modern day people. He wrote a previous book that I don't remember what it's called, but he wrote some of the studies. He studied with the Hadza a lot over the years. And he's the one that where you get this idea that the Hadza are plant-based, like fiber eating 150 grams of fiber a day and 2 million whatever types of plants per year. That's where this information is coming from, this guy. So I spent time with the Hadza. Mary Reddick went with me. People may know her. I interviewed her before. I think you've had her on.
Yep.
Liver King just went with them. If people are familiar with that big fella. And they experienced the exact same thing. The Hadza are after meat. They eat the whole animal and then they go get another animal. They don't go after plants. They don't go after berries much at all. They go for honey a bit and some meat. The women, we did see the women in one of the groups eating some tubers, but it wasn't even what you think. They would boil these, they would put them by the fire, not boil them. They'd put them by the fire, heat them up, and then they gnaw on them and then spit out all the fiber. So I ate something. They gave it to me. It was kind of just sort of tasteless, just fibrous nothingness. I chewed on it as long as I could. I probably got 25 calories of glucose and then I spit out the fiber like they were doing. They just spit out the rest. So I don't know what kind of Hadza groups this guy Ponzer was studying, but he actually was going to have him on my podcast. And then he declined once he heard that, I don't know, my position, something, or he didn't like that, I went and didn't get the government's permission to go film with them. He thinks that the Hadza can't make their own choices about being filmed or not, and that I have to ask the government. So that guy's I don't know. I'm not going to say anything bad about him. He's an interesting character.
So, but I mean, where's he from? He's from Harvard. What does he care about the Tanzanian government? I mean, I guess
that's his. He said it's against the rules. He's like, I'm from Harvard. I studied them and I went through the government and this is what you have to do. You didn't follow the rules, so I'm not coming on your show.
Interesting. It's one thing, and maybe you brought this up when you talked to the Hadza. I'm sure you had a translator because I mean, which sort of language they speak, but I've seen a lot. They're kind of reduced to hunting baboons a lot, because their game choices have been so decimated over the years through, whatever. I mean, I mean, my understanding is, 100 years ago, they would have been hunting much larger animals. Is that fair to say? Are they kind of struggling with the food selection now?
Yes, absolutely. It's another government story. It's also like the Pygmies. There's a whole government story there about them getting pushed off their land. And Justin Wren, who goes on Joe Rogan a lot, talks about this. They're pushed out of the forest so the government can make money off the gorillas. And now they have no food sources. Same thing with the Hadza. They have no land. They're around Lake Eyasi. There's no big animals at all. The biggest animal is a baboon. All the big animals that they used to hunt are in Ngorongoro Crater, which is a massively profitable tourist destination. And so, yes, they're not allowed to hunt the big animals. Mickey Bendor, who we both know, has done a lot of good research on this, showing, how we used to get these giant animals and we had tons of fat. And now they're reduced to the smallest animals. I mean, they got a baboon when we were with them, and that was the biggest thing we got. Before, the day before, we got a tik. It's like this little tiny baby deer type thing. That's And then when Mary and Liver King went, they just got back. They're here in Austin, actually down the street from me. They said they got these little high rocks. I don't know what they're called. Have you heard of this animal? Like a rock.
They look like kind of rat-like creatures. Yeah, I mean, I've been there. I've been to Ngorongoro Crater in Tanzania, and and I met with the Masaai many years. It's 2000. This is 20 some years ago. But I mean, I think the hyrax is like, it's interesting, and I may be mistaken on this, but I think the hyrax, and even though it looks like a little rat, is like one of the closest living relatives to an elephant. Genetically, it's kind of a really weird thing. You wouldn't think.
Oh, really?
I may be mistaken on it, but I thought it was a hyrax was somehow very closely similarly related to an elephant. But anyway, just kind of a weird thing. They're small, and what they were telling me, they would just roast them whole. They'd just have like burned fur and then kind of like raw in the middle, and they just eat them. And it didn't sound so good. At least when we were with them, and then they got the little tik. We ate the liver raw, but they cooked the meat through, and we got to eat the meat, and we ate the brains as well, which were not bad. But yeah, they also got the little what are they called? The little koala, like fur baby looking things. Do you know those tiny little? They look like a stuffed animal. Oh no, I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, I think
they call them, like fur babies or some little
or something like that, maybe
bush baby. Yeah, bush babies.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what they're reduced to. So we went on the 8-hour hunt with them, and then they kicked us to the curb and kept going. But all we got in the first 8 hours was 2 little bush babies, and then they went further into the forest and got a baboon. But yeah, it's pretty sad. Like, that's what they're reduced to, but they love it. They enjoy it. They get them. They get some kind of animal every time they go out, and they have no time for anything else. It's just, that's what they're about. And I don't know where they're getting these fiber myths from, especially if they're spitting out all the fiber. I think it's these Harvard scientists that go over there and they have this paradigm, and they're like, oh, these guys are chewing on some tubers, and then they just pretend they don't see them spit out all the fiber. I don't know what they do.
But I mean, again, obviously, I don't know how long you spent with them. A couple of days, I assume, right? Was that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, a couple of days, 2 different groups, 3 days, and then Mary and Liver King went back and did a few more days. So I guess it's not endless time.
Yeah, and I know, like, you spent time in Japan. I don't know, have you been anywhere else traveling to document what people are eating, or
what? Yeah, went to Costa Rica. Well, nothing too exotic. I've been to Mexico and Canada to film and do stuff, but Costa Rica recently with Mary as well, and we went to a traditional eating little farm, and they ate off the land. Yeah, basically they just had their cows, they had pigs, they had chickens, they made their own cheese, and they just ate what was around them. But still, they still do import. A lot of these cultures have to rely on sacks of corn flour in Africa as well. So it's hard to find groups that don't have that's basically empty calories to supplement the fact that they don't have enough animals anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, I would imagine that's probably had a negative health effect on even, even some of these traditional tribes. What about the Maasai? I mean, you said, did you? Because when I was there, when I met some of the Maasai, they had offered me their little blood drink. I declined back then. This is 20 some years ago. It just didn't look.
Mhm.
I saw like a bunch of clotted blood. It smelled funny, and I was like, no thanks, guys. But did you? What about your time with the Maasai? How did that go?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I drank it. I thought it tasted fine. They with the milk, it tastes a lot better. I drank the pure goat's blood when they butchered a goat for us, and that was a bit rough. Um, yeah, but still, they still add in all these other foods because that's all they have. I mean, the real traditional people don't, but there's sort of this like linear progression as you go away from the real native living people on the outskirts, and they just added more just like beans and rice and corn and this cheap filler that they have to live off of, and they try to integrate into their culture. But yeah, the people like way out, they were the healthiest, and then yes, they were eating the most traditional version of the diet. And then you could see the people in the city. We actually saw all the way up to like Maasai people that were completely modernized in Arusha, and they looked like Americans. Like it was a nightmare. They were just not healthy, just cooking up beans and corn, and yeah, definitely not doing the traditional diet.
So when you were at Arusha, did you get a chance to go up Kilimanjaro? Did you do that when you were there?
No, we didn't have time. We had to just go straight out to see all the groups.
Okay, yeah, because I was there when we climbed up Kilimanjaro. I did that in 2000. I did 50 push-ups at the top at 19,000 feet, so that was pretty fun. But
Nice.
so the Maasai, like I said, you said these people were pretty healthy. I mean, I mean, obviously, it's hard to document if somebody has heart disease, without doing
Hmm.
medical exams and stuff like that. But I mean, what was your general impression of the people that were the closer they got to tradition? Were they fit, lean? I mean, what do they look like? Were they tall? Were they short? Were they, what did they
Yeah.
look?
Yeah. So there was a guy, the main guy we hung out with was 70 something. He was a beast. He was just running around, like running up mountains and just like hiking with us and just super healthy. He said his dad lived well into his 90. He didn't know. I mean, I don't know about their age guesses, but it was over 100. And it was interesting because they had the right idea. Like he was saying his the older generations didn't trust the new foods, or they didn't trust the oils. It was really cool. Like they didn't know the science of vegetable oils and all that, but they were just like, we don't trust this. Why is it sitting on a shelf in a store for 6 months? Like they heard about these oil. Like I don't know if they got them out there. I think they do try to push them all the way out into in the middle of nowhere, but they don't trust it. And there was this thing, like I said, the linear like progression as you go away, or regression as you go away from the the cities, they got more healthy. And so the same thing with age, the older generations were the most healthy, which was interesting, especially when we saw the Pygmies in Uganda. We were with a lady who was dancing around, who was 105, and she was dancing, like she was jumping around. And then she seemed to be the most sturdy, healthy person. And she had 6 generations under her, not a complete linear line, but her, 6 generations represented. And the youngest people were the least healthy. So these are the people, yeah, just relying on the pots of beans and rice and oil. And so they were the least healthy. But it was pretty obvious that you could see health when they ate their natural diet. Yes, I mean, we didn't measure them, like you said. We didn't have, their full medical history, but with the Hadza, Mary brought a little blood glucose monitor, and she pricked they of course agreed to it and wanted to do it. They're very interested, and they all had just really good blood glucose, except for the Hadza. Some of the Hadza that they get a lot of treats and snacks from tourists passing by, and then those people actually did have blood sugar problems, which was interesting. But the majority of them looked super healthy to me.
In because you said Costa Rica, and so Costa Rica is I can't remember, is it the Nicoya region of Costa Rica? I think is supposed to be quote unquote one of these blue zones where they eat nothing but plants and barely any meat. Is that, I mean, I don't know how close you were to that part of Costa Rica or what your observations were in that area. I know Mary has said that
Yeah,
blue zones they're pretty meat centric in her experience, but I don't know if you experienced that.
exactly. Yeah. No, no, it was. So Nicoya, that's where we were. It's the whole peninsula is the Nicoya Peninsula, and that's we were in Santa Teresa for some of the time. We went up a little more in the mountains, which is still part of that region. And yeah, of course, it's just the same bogus story you've heard a million times, where they say they're plant based. You get there, and all they're doing is showing us their animals, and it's like, this is here's the pig. This is what we eat for breakfast. It was like a pork chop, and it was just all about the animal foods. They rely on animals, and part of the story, well, they don't have enough animals. That's what I've been saying. So they rely more. I've noticed in Africa and in Costa Rica, they rely more on like milk and cheese because it's a renewable resource of animal foods, and chicken and eggs. So yeah, a lot of them. So maybe that factors into it, because I've heard these studies too with the blue zones, and like, oh yeah, they actually don't eat that much animal food. Well, it's like they're saving those animals to produce milk and eggs, and then they do eat them when it's a special occasion. So they definitely do eat them, and it's a very important part of their diet, even though it's small, in some cases. But it's not. Well, like the actual meat is a small amount, but the animal food calories is not small.
Yeah, how much? I mean, there's questionable about how much energy expenditure these different people utilize. Obviously, you're hunting a lot. You're going to be at least doing a lot of walking. I mean, what was the activity like among these different groups?
Yeah, they're pretty. They so maybe Herman Ponzer was a bit correct in some of it, where they don't actually seem to expend that much energy because they're so efficient and they're so good at what they do, that and they're so good at acquiring food. So this is interesting when you're talking about why even agriculture started. People think that it's because we were just lazy, or it was hard to get food, and now we finally were able to get food easily. And that's not really the case. From everything that I've seen, and I've talked to archaeologists and interviewed tons of people, we all our ancestors could easily get animal foods, and they could go hunting. And well, yeah, the hunt wasn't easy. We did walk with them for 8 hours, like a brisk walk. And so they were good at getting animal food. They could acquire it easily, and then they'd go hang out. It was kind of interesting. Like, they didn't have to work too hard. I mean, if they were, building things or climbing mountains, yes, they did work, but on a daily basis, they could acquire food pretty efficiently. That was my impression, that which I think, I don't know if people have different points they're trying to make, but to me, that point to me means that we were thriving throughout history, that we could always get enough animal food, and that, yeah, I don't know, it was pretty easy. It was pretty good life. I mean, the Hadza, they just hang out by the fire and eat the meat and talk and sing and basically just chill.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I guess, was there a diversity of? I mean, obviously, there's like the females stayed at camp mostly, or stayed at the wherever they lived, and then the males went out and hunted.
Mhm.
And so, I don't know how active the females were. If it was mostly just kind of hanging out type of stuff, or was there a division of labor where one person's in charge of the water and one person's in charge of the cooking, or how did they break
Mhm.
things up?
Yeah, it did seem a bit like that. There was actually some pretty heavy women we saw that were just sitting around doing nothing and eating the tubers, or they were eating like leaves. So they did have a bit of, the only the plant food that I saw is they had like these pumpkin leaves that they were stripping out the bad parts. And yeah, I mean, it was also kind of sad, is the women didn't seem to get as much meat as the men. Like, the men would just go cook it and eat it, and then I don't know what the women got. So yeah, The women looked less healthy, I'll say that. And there was that division of labor. And then with the Maasai, the women weren't allowed to do the blood in the milk. They all kind of disappeared when that happened. I think did you see that as well? Or did you notice that?
I don't remember, quite honestly, about
Yeah.
it. There were no women around when I was, it was like three guys with their little satchel, their little leather satchel of,
Yeah.
of the meat. I mean, of the milk stuff, the blood milk stuff. But, it's interesting because you point out how easy it was to acquire food. And there's a nice paper called, I think it's called Elephant Hunting in the the Paleolithic or something like that.
Mhm.
And it describes, basically said early man could kill elephants whenever he wanted. I mean, they had no difficulty getting food. And obviously the food choices, back then were, and this is one of the arguments that Mickey Van Doren makes, that, trying to study the Hadza or the Pygmies today doesn't really represent how they might have lived 200,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, or whatever was dictating our species' diet. And we had much better game. And I think, even like you said, right now they're stuck eating baboons and, chewing on a few tubers. And it seems like it's, do you get the impression that that way of life will soon fade out completely? Is that the thought there?
Yeah, there's not many of them left. And they're they're marginalized. Like I don't know. It's just how societies progress, and they just want to make everyone live in the cities and just be part of the system. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how many more generations it's gonna last. Maybe one. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking the Hadza, the Maasai. They look more stable. They have more land. They're just kind of left alone more, and because they're they're a little more advanced where they have their herds of cattle, so they're not having to go out and hunt every single day, so they look more stable. Yeah.
Do you have any plans to go visit any other places anytime soon as part of the filming? Or, I mean, you said I don't know if you're fine with that, but
Well, we need it. We're at the end here where we just need to get it out. Yes, we're doing graphics and editing and all that, but we do have to get a few more interviews just to fill in holes. But so we're not going to really travel for those. We might just bring in some people to, come to Austin or something and do that. But for future projects, I want to get up to the Arctic Circle. I interviewed a guy, a Sami reindeer herder, and I interviewed a woman in Greenland who, eats all the traditional foods and talks about all that. And I think, yeah, that's a big piece of the story. I don't know about, maybe some Inuit in Alaska. I think that because that's so different. Everything I've done is more Africa, Mexico. It's just a whole different environment. And I think that ice environment is where we came from for many years, right? For much of history, we're up in Europe in the cold.
yeah, I mean, certainly my, at least my ancestors would have been through Europe, Northern Europe, I believe. And let me ask you, I mean, because it's interesting, some of the Sami in particular, these people inhabit, northern Scandinavia, basically, Finland and stuff like that. They tend to be, in contrast to some like Inuit, they criticize life expectancy, 60s, 70s. And I point out that the Inuit they smoke at a rate of about 70% of their population is smoking, and they start smoking when they're about 8 years of age. So they smoke incredibly a lot. So that may have something to do with it. Also the fact that they live a pretty difficult life in general. But the Sami, their life expectancy is like 82, which is better than their contemporary people in Finland, which is interesting. So what did the Sami guy have to say to you? I'm just kind of curious as to what information was about.
Oh, he was right on with that. He was a really interesting guy. He was an artist, and he like carved really high-end knives and artistic, traditional works. And he was really into nutrition, and he was all about getting people back to the native tradition of eating. And his grandfather did eat that way. And he told a story, man, I don't want to get the age wrong. His grandfather was in his 90s. We'll just say it was somewhere between 92 and 95, maybe up to 97, somewhere between 92 and 97. He, healthy as an ox, just ate reindeer and some fish. And, and in the 3 months in the winter, he got a few berries. He was pretty like carnivores, really. He was strong as an ox until the end. He went on a 20-mile ski trip, just cross-country skiing to visit a friend just for the day. Just went out in the morning, 20 miles, came back. Maybe it was 20 kilometers. Sorry, I might be getting these numbers wrong. Visited his pal, came back, and then, just like a week later died. But like up until the end, right? Up until the end, mid 90s, could do a 20-kilometer there, 40-kilometer there and back snow trek. So he told a lot of stories of that, that it's the same story. Again, the older generations, super healthy, live long. The newer generations, disaster. They're eating all the modern foods.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a similar account of a whale hunt. What we're doing up either Alaska, Canada. I can't remember exactly the location, but and they're allowed to continue to hunt whale as it's a part of their tradition, and they do it, once a year or something like that. They get a whale, and the oldest member of the hunting party was in his 90s. Still out there on a boat hunting a whale, which I think is, you got to imagine it's got to be a lot of work, I would imagine. So they're still able to do that very, very well. And you think about the average 90-year-old American, and you're lucky if they can, walk back and forth from the refrigerator. So it's pretty amazing. So obviously, we've got all these traditional people to look at and look as examples of, what's, a big contrast to the standard way we're eating. Where do you see the biggest potential gains? Some people say it's sugar, some people say it's seed oil, some people say it's just combination of ultra processed food, or it's all the above. Are you seeing any kind of major factors that point to the situation we have with so much disease and disability and depression and all the stuff that we see?
Yeah, I think I'm in the mindset of it's all three. I keep trying to tease out like which one's the worst, and seed oils look pretty bad. Refined grains to me are pretty bad, especially our modern refined grains. The seed oils, it was interesting in Uganda to see in the city, they were eating, the seed oils were coming in, and they didn't have they didn't really have like sugar. They didn't really have McDonald's. They didn't have processed foods. All they had was natural foods and seed oils. And they actually seem to be pretty healthy up until 45. So it's interesting to see, we're walking around the town and went to the markets and seeing the city version of these people in Uganda. And a lot of the women, once they were over 45, they were very unwell, very big, gigantic, and they were just eating natural foods. But then they had the seed oils, and they had these, they call them cooking oils, and they just had like a Gatorade bottle, like an old Gatorade bottle filled with some mystery oil, and they'd be frying everything in it. And it seems like you could get away with it for a while because they didn't have a ton of sugar or the other refined grains or the processed foods. Like these people in Uganda, they can't afford, they can't afford them. Like in America, McDonald's is cheap, right? That's where people go to get cheap food. In Uganda, that's the most expensive food on earth. They would never afford that. They're like, what do you mean? I'm going to get, some chicken and bananas from my neighbor. That's all I can eat. So the interesting is they can survive. So they didn't have childhood obesity. They didn't have teen obesity. They didn't have people in their 20s, 30s. They're fine. But then it's like this slower trajectory than the westernized states are on, or countries are on, is that it catches up to them maybe when they're 45. And I think there wasn't many men around who were over 45, but those two, when I did see them, they had like the big beer belly thing going on. And so I don't know, it's super anecdotal. I think the seed oils had a big thing to do with it because the people outside the city who didn't have the seed oils were eating the same diet almost, just minus the seed oils, and they were all super healthy. And then, you see the 45-year-olds in the city. I don't know what else it could have been, but that's why I think it's all three, because it accelerates it, right? So we can have childhood diabetes and obesity because if you're mashing all three of those things together, it's just the quickest timeline to become sick. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Let me go back to some of these African, different tribes you'd visit, whether it's Pygmy, Hadza, or the Maasai, cooking. They cook their meat. Is that fair to say? I mean, were they eating it over a flame, or how are they cooking it
They
typically?
all cooked their meat. Yes. The only thing they did do, they did eat the liver raw when they opened the animal, and they cut into pieces and shared it. Other than that, everything was cooked. The Maasai cooked the full goat for us, and they put all the organs into a pot, and they cooked it like a stew. So after the meal, and then they put some root in it. It's funny because they say, oh, the Maasai, they use herbs. They use herbs. I'm like, no, they don't use herbs. There was no like leafy greens. It was like a pepper root. It was just a white root that they put in that would maybe had some medicinal value. And then they would drink this weird stew. They would only really drink the broth of it as a post-meal stew or whatever broth. Which, yeah, maybe had some medicinal value. Maybe, yeah, who knows?
Interesting. And then as far as, I guess, drinking, it was just, I assume it was mostly just water. I mean, did they make some kind of teas out of bark or something funky like that? Or
Didn't see that. The Hadza drank like the dirtiest water ever. They went on their 8-hour hunt with no water. And we actually didn't have enough water. It was kind of a problem. But they would just go into the tree, like a baobab tree, and it would collect water. And then they have the kid would climb up it, get like a half empty fruit shell, type of little cup type thing, and get out this brown water. And then they just take a couple sips and they were good. They didn't use salt. They just weren't about salt. I think there's a different physiology that happens when you don't eat salt, you're acclimated to these hot environments, and you don't drink a lot of water. The human body operates differently. I don't know if you have any ideas on that.
well, you can conserve it, and if you're like I said, if you're taking a lot of water without electrolyte, then you're going to be diluting your sodium stores. You get hyponatremic, and so I guess it would make sense, if you have a way to, maintain with low water. And again, obviously, if they're eating meat, it's 70% water typically. I mean, you cook some of that out, and so I mean, they're still getting some degree of water. Like I can go feed my dogs for days without water, and they're fine. If I give them water, they never have a problem because they're getting plenty of water from meat. But what about as far as dental health? I know Weston Price went and looked at all the teeth. Were there any people missing teeth or anything like that? Or were the ones that were eating the modern food, do they have dental problems, or what did you see?
Yeah, it was the same, pretty linear, in the city, or some of the city people had pretty good teeth, but it seemed like the more kind of grains and just filler foods they ate, the more tooth problems they had. Because we went to sort of agricultural communities too, and they had like really messed up teeth. They had joint pain. This was interesting. Yeah, we got a group of elders together, and it turned out to be a more agricultural community, and they were all a mess. Like all of them had all the arthritis, all the signs of every modern thing that Americans have, the bad teeth and the joint pain, hunched over, complaining of things. And these are the people that were so proud of their ugali. Like, ugali, like, what's your favorite food? Ugali, which is just corn paste and they just ate, they're like, we eat bananas and plants and corn paste. And I'm like, well, you guys look like it. You guys don't look well. Like all of you are fading away. And then you go out, to a different community that's eating all the animal foods, great teeth, great health. We asked them questions like, do you experience back pain, joint pain? They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. With our translators grew up with these people. Like he was very good. And they just had no idea what we were talking about. They're like, this guy fell out of a tree and he had back pain. But he's like, no, we don't have pain. Like as we grow older, we do not have joint pains unless you fall out of a tree. And the teeth, I took a little video, I put it up on social media a long time ago of the women in the Hadza tribe, just amazing teeth. Like you couldn't find a tooth model that was better than this. And she was living in a grass hut. They're like, there's no clue what a dentist is, obviously, right? They didn't have any toothpaste. They kind of picked their teeth with some sticks. but absolutely amazing teeth. It was some of the Masaai traditionally they like remove the front tooth. Do you remember that at all? Or you maybe seen photos?
Yeah, that was from tetanus. That was to prevent tetanus. So because they would have a lot of problems with tetanus, and so they would do that so they could feed them through a straw if they had lockjaw, and that's why they do that. That's a tradition.
I remember there's a story to it, or maybe it was the bottom one. They would remove it here.
Just so they when they had rigid lockjaw, they could still get nutrition in them, and that's why they would do that in kids prophylactically a lot of times. Yeah.
Well, other than that, so it threw you off a little because you're like, oh, does it have bad teeth? And then you're like, oh no, like let's look at them, and it's amazing. And yeah, Weston Price completely in line with what he found. Just amazing dental health with no dentists.
Yeah, that's not surprising at all. And you look at some of the skeletons, their teeth are designed to last as long as we do for sure. What about when you were there, were you concerned about, because some people have concern about eating some of these animals and infection, parasite, you mentioned the dirty water. Did you guys have to take precautions, or were you limited in what you could eat with it? Did you eat everything they ate, or were some things you're like, I ain't eating that, or how did that?
I did not eat the baboon. I wasn't about that. That's just, I'm not trying to eat primates, and it smelled bad. It was kind of gross. They brought it back and they sat there all night, and then they wanted to cook it for us the next morning. Yeah, no way. But I ate everything else. I felt great. I didn't drink this dirty water, but man, I ate that weird soup. I ate it all. I felt amazing. They obviously don't wash their hands. That like they were giving me that little liver piece, the raw liver, and the knife had guts on it. It had dirt on it, all kinds of stuff, and I just ate it. I think the microbiome stuff is like really strong over there. They have a strong immune system. They are not washing their hands. They're not using Purell. This whole last 2 years, man, I've washed my hands less than ever. And I haven't had a bad day. I haven't had one day in the last 2 years where I felt anything less than perfect. A side point. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You were there. When were you in Tanzania and Uganda?
It was 1 year ago, exactly.
So it was in the midst of this pandemic thing. Was there any concern about that among those people? Were there people wearing masks in these tribes and stuff like that, or how was that going?
No, I mean, the whole country wasn't doing anything. I got into Tanzania. They just weren't doing COVID. They just weren't about it. And I remember the leader, I think the leader got killed off since then, maybe related to him not doing COVID. Nothing. I mean, the airport, yes. When you show up to the airport on that federal airport grounds, yes, there were some masks. Once you left that airport, they did not know anything about it. The entire city of Arusha, there was 20 people packed in a van. Zero clue about a mask, nothing. This was, a year ago. No one had any idea, just no precautions, no nothing. And like I said, they were all generally healthy though. They like up until when they hit their middle age and maybe some stuff started catching up to them. But as a whole, even in the cities, they're kind of eating natural foods, right? They can't afford McDonald's. Like they're eating meat everywhere you go. It's just, they're handing you meat sticks and, there's just roasted meat for sale and whatever, plant foods. And they seem to be fine, and they weren't having a problem with COVID.
Did you see, because a lot of people will say, maybe they just didn't have access to many calories and that's why did it feel like there was just not enough food? I mean, at some point, or do they have all the food they needed basically?
So maybe in sub-Saharan Africa, maybe if you go to like the deserts, they don't have enough food, but in Tanzania and Uganda, they have all the calories they need. They have all the calories they need. Some people don't have the correct calories. Some people have to rely mostly on just eating 20 bananas a day in Uganda because that's all they have. But they were not hurting for calories.
Was, in Uganda, I mean, I don't know what it's like. I mean, this is where Idi Amin was, years ago. He was a brutal dictator that lived there. I mean, was Uganda, I know that like, maybe even as dangerous or something. Did you have any concerns going into Uganda?
Oh yeah, actually it was a bit dicey. We got stopped. I thought we were going to get kidnapped by the guards or whatever it's called, the police that were on the side of the highway. So they have these checkpoints. And on our way home, we went all the way out to what is the impenetrable forest where the gorillas are? That's where the botwell are, the famous, forest way out west. Came back on our way home, trying to get to the airport, really. And we got stopped. They had these bogus charges. They were like, "Oh, you didn't stop at the last checkpoint." And the guy's like, "What are you talking about? We did." And we got held for an hour on the side of the road. And they took our driver. We were actually emailing the embassy. We started emailing our location, and it was a whole thing. Yeah, like people were shouting, like they all have guns. It was crazy. But after an hour, we finally, the driver came back and we just went on our way. But yes, it did seem a little dicey around there.
Yeah, I know when I flew into Tanzania, we actually flew into Kenya and then drove a bus to Tanzania, and we stopped in Arusha, and then we had to take a car. It was a taxi, which is anybody who has a car turns into a taxi, and you get mobbed as soon as you step off the bus by 50 guys wanting to give you a ride. And we took this car from Arusha to Moshi, which is where the kind of the base of Kilimanjaro is kind of located. And I remember it was nighttime and they were driving as fast as that car could go, because they said that people would throw rocks and try to knock the car off the road, so they reckon and they'd rob people. And that was pretty common to see that.
Oh,
so
you know what? I forgot. Yeah, we did see that. So when we got back in the city, it got dark. And I remember our drivers were like, we're not driving at night, but we got stuck in this insane traffic in the city. And the driver was like, put your cell phones, hide them, hide everything, close the windows, and then right in front of us, 2 cars in front of us in traffic, they reached in, grabbed someone's cell phone and just ran off. Like 2 teenagers, whatever. I got a machete from the Pygmies, the botwell, and I was holding the machete and ready by the window. But yeah, it's no joke.
Oh, I guess I'll just ask, you mentioned machete, because some people see me eating my steaks with basically what's effectively looks like a machete, and I get a laugh about that. But did they use forks, knives, silverware, plates, bowls? How did they do their meals? Or was it just pick off the bone and just munch it like that? Or how did they do that?
Hadza, they had none of that. They have absolutely nothing. How they cook is they put on a stick. So, okay, they do have a knife. So somehow they acquire a knife, which is basically just a blade, and then they have to make their own handle. So somehow they find or trade for a blade. They make their own handle, and then they can slice the meat. Then they put it on a stick, and most cooking methods, Masaai too, is they just put it on sticks next to the fire. So it kind of just roasts vertically, and then they flip it, and then they just eat it with their hands. Yeah, but then, they don't really have many tools. The botwa, it's just a lot of just eating with your hands. They have to boil beans. So the sad thing is the Pygmies don't have any land anymore to get animals. And so they have to rely on like pots of beans and rice, and they're just eating like pots of mush. And I don't know. They make little bowls and stuff.
What do they use for when they hunted, I guess baboons or bush babies or whatever? Were they using bow and arrow, or what were they using to kill the animals with? How did they get them?
So they make all their own bow and arrows. So they lose them sometimes. So they collect new ones, and they have a certain stick. And I remember when I had to carry that back for a guy, and he's just like, "Oh, here's 3 more." And I just raw sticks, and then they would dry them out. And then, so they have different arrows for each animal. So each Hadza guy has a bundle of like 6 or 7 in his hand at all times. So they roll out with a bunch of dogs, their bow and arrow, or their bow in one hand, and then 6 or 7 arrows in that. And then they just roll out for the whole day. And one arrow is just a pointy stick that's hardened by fire, and that's for small animals. Then they have one and it has a stopper on it for like birds and stuff. So it doesn't completely just go through the small animal and blow it up. So it has a stopper, right? So it's like a corn cob or something they find. And then there's a tribe called the Datoga, which are the blacksmith of Lake Eyasi area of Tanzania. And they do some metalworking. And so they figured out a way to use like a cow's stomach as bellows and heat up coals enough to melt metal. And they go around finding bits and pieces of metal, melt it, and create arrowheads. And oh wait, I have one. I just realized. So this is the one they use for baboons. So it has these barbs on it. So this is one of the ones in their arsenal. They have a simple arrow. Oh, I have it back here. So this is a Hadza arrow. So they make their own with the feathers, and then you can see the twine. They make their own twine, and it's just a stick. And then here's the point from a Datoga. So the Datoga, they trade with the Datoga. So they get, these are the two metal tips, and then the other ones are wood tips.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and I imagine they're pretty expert marksmen, I would assume. Do they spend time practicing in their downtime, or were they pretty accurate?
Amazingly accurate, and they're amazingly strong. Well, you try to pull back their bows, you can't pull it back. And they have these guys are pretty small. They're actually kind of wiry, and they'll just pull back like this so easily. And yeah, it's amazing how accurate because we asked this guy to do it 5 times in a row, and he hit this one like little stump 5 times in a row because we wanted to film it, and it was just crazy. And they also, they in their free time, they put a bottle, they had like a water bottle they put on a stick about 30 yards away, and then they would just see who could hit the stick first or hit the bottle. Yeah. It's amazing though. Well, it's all they do. It's like they just hang out by the fire and eat meat and then shoot the arrow. It's like, it's their life.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Brian, I want to give you enough time to just kind of let people know stuff because we're running out of time here, but Food Lies, so you don't know exactly where that's going to be distributed, when it's going to be released, but I know you got some other things going on. You got a podcast, you got, I think, the Sapien thing. Could just tell us a little bit of any of the other stuff and where people can find you and that type of stuff.
Yeah, I've developed some things while I'm waiting for the film because I'm not the one editing it. Like I said, my guy's working as hard as he can. We'll finish by the end of the year. That's what he's told me. We have some new funding. We're trying to, I'm sure it'll be on Netflix. It'll get to Netflix, but it will be on more places than Netflix. So if you don't have Netflix, don't worry. We're getting worldwide distribution. Backers can get it. We're sending it to the backers. It's on Indiegogo still. So you can go to foodlies.org, check that out. And yeah, in the meantime, I've started the Peak Human podcast that you were on back in the day. Maybe we need to do another episode because you're one of my first guests back like 4 years ago. I don't even know if you remember that. Like after we filmed for the film, we did a podcast back in the day. Yeah. And then Sapien, I work with Dr. Gary. Dr. Gary probably came on Revero at one point too. But he's back in LA doing some good things, one of the good doctors. And so yeah, that's sapien.org.
Yeah. Okay. Well, awesome. Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed Gary, and of course, yeah, I'd be happy to come on the podcast again, Brian, if that's something we'll do at any time. But we're so excited to see the Food Lies movie. Are you finding, I mean, I know, like I talked to like Chris Bell, who's a filmmaker, said it's the appetite for non-plant-based narrative films from places like Netflix and some of these other major organizations has been challenging. I know like Rob Wolf and Diana Rogers put out Sacred Cow, and I don't think that was able to get on Netflix. I think Vinnie Tortorich's film, I don't think that got on Netflix. I know they've been pushing back against I mean, they're very, very much seem to favor this plant-based narrative. Are you still running into that, or is it something you've noticed?
It's a good point. And I don't know what we're going to face. So that could be a problem. I've talked to Vinny years ago about him not getting on Netflix. And I think there's more issues than just they don't want it. Or maybe this is one of their strategies where they can not take it by just offering you pennies for it. That could be the case where they're just like, oh yeah, well, you spent 3 years on it and you spent like $100,000 of your own money. We'll give you like 20 grand. I've heard they kind of do stuff like that. But there, Pete Evans is an Australian chef, got the magic pill on Netflix. I mean, that was many years ago. It came and went. It was on for 2 years. It didn't get removed. Some people think, oh, it got removed. No, they got a 2-year contract. It was on from whatever, 2016 to 2018, and then it went off. So I don't think it's impossible. And also, we have to be strategic about it. This is not a carnivore film, it's not. It's kind of just let's look. It's a general health film for the general public, but tons of good messages. And it's definitely not like, oh, let's eat in moderation. Like I'm definitely not doing that, but I'm not trying to make this like, let's eat like a carnivore diet. You know, you kind of have to fly under the radar with when you go mainstream.
Yeah, no, I know. I've noticed that. Believe me. Anyway, well, Brian, thank you again for spending the time. Appreciate it, and good luck to getting this thing out there. I'm sure it'll be helpful for a lot of people. And continue doing what you're doing. Keep doing the good work.
All right.
The rest of you guys, we'll be back tomorrow. We got another guest tomorrow, so you guys have a great day. And Brian, yes, if you want me to hop on, just let me know, and we'll set something up.
That'd be good. Yeah, I'll email you or something.
All right, thanks, guys. Bye bye now.
Okay, take care.
Bye bye.